Hey y'all, DT Neal here talking about storytelling, books, in this case science fiction. Still thinking about science fiction. Can't stop thinking about science fiction. How could anyone ever stop thinking about science fiction? And, the previous posts I've done, I've talked about hard sci-fi and soft sci-fi, or social sci-fi as it's known. And again, I think the contention that I made, and this is sort of especially relevant in the wake of the latest rockets blowing up in the sky, but the hard sci-fi aspect is really reflective of the times that spawned it. Times of progress and optimism for the future. And almost naively, one could say, but there are a lot of things, this idea of, humanity being in some kind of galactic federation or empire out there in space, living very conventional consumer lifestyles without the real ramifications of what we have to do to get to that point, to even have a hope of being at that point, and the logistical challenges that that kind of space exploration takes. And I've talked about that already a little bit. But it's funny because there is, at least in my view, an efficacy in those cosmic horror themes that I've mentioned before, like the decentering of the human experience, which adds a certain gravitas to space exploration. The idea of an uncaring universe, a universe which humanity is just a tiny, tiny little thing, little teeny tiny, like the greatest human accomplishments are just like not even dust motes in the massiveness of the universe. And the inevitable nature of entropy and the interaction between energy and entropy, and how we are moving toward inevitable oblivion on a universal level, barring some massive cosmologic phenomenon that we are as yet unaware of. And in the face of that, the idea of having like a shopping mall on Mars is absurd to the point of being insane in many ways. And that's why I put such emphasis on social science fiction. I think there's really a lot still to be mined in terms of human perspectives, human philosophy, human blindness, even to our predicament as a species. And that's where I think science fiction writers who do the social aspect of it are really the ones who are getting to those important things. It's not like figuring out the mechanics of a faster than light engine or the latest railgun. I mean, railguns are cool. Who couldn't like a railgun? They're fantastic. But those social science fiction settings are really where a lot of that heavy lifting has to come. And, there were writers that I thought in decades past, one I always use as an example is Joe Haldeman's The Forever War. That was a really interesting, it could only have been written by a Vietnam War vet, that idea of a person seeing society change from his own vantage point as a participant in this ongoing conflict, and how society itself is changing while he is ostensibly remaining the same and becoming increasingly out of place. That's an example of a really nice fusion of those kind of hard sci-fi ideas with social science fiction ideas. And that's only one example. There's plenty of others, but that's, I think, a worthwhile thing for writers to explore. And because we really do have some very, very massive social issues that we cannot sweep under the rug anymore if we're to advance as a species, or we don't solve those problems and we just careen into extinction. before then, a period of terrible unrest and then inevitable extinction because we haven't solved those problems. And I think science fiction writers really have the benefit of probing those areas and coming up with hypotheticals that can address those things.